The Science Show!
Piano!
Whose idea was this?
Yeah, I know that was really weird, but I just had to kick off a new episode with something completely different. There's a link in the description for the guys who actually thought of that. But anyway, it's been a very long time. I'm Oblivious Alsk 2.0, and I mean 2.0 because of the contacts. Not having glasses on your face continuously pulling your nose downward is a much better feeling. And in case you haven't seen me before, this is a show not called The Science Show, but Science or Not. This is a show where I just take random bits of science news that I thought were interesting and decided to bring to the masses. Not that I have a huge subscriber base yet, but whatever. So let's get the show going. The first story that I thought was interesting and actually practical to use in the modern day world is a new test for figuring out a baby's gender before it's born. Now I know there's a lot of those out there, but this one's special because it can be 95% accurate at week 7 and 100% accurate at 20 weeks. The other major question about this that needs to be asked is the danger level. Some procedures to figure out an unborn baby's gender are invasive and might trigger a miscarriage. However, this new procedure is nothing more than a simple blood test of the mother, which is obviously no harm to the baby. Well, I don't know why we haven't thought of testing it before, but the pregnant woman's blood is sent in for what is called a cell-free fetal DNA testing. If the sample of blood has Y chromosomes in it, the baby is male, since males have XY chromosomes, while females have XX. As for the uses of this test, I guess I can assume that knowing the gender of your baby much before it's born is important simply for the mere initial excitement of knowing what gender your baby is. And also so you can start painting the baby's room blue or pink. That's so stereotypical. Does anyone even do that anymore? I mean, I don't think I'd want to be a baby waking up to a room that's completely light blue. That's just disgusting. And what happened to the rest of the color spectrum? I think it would be much better to wake up to a completely dark green room. You know, it would have that whole soothing deep forest feeling. But I'm getting sidetracked. Other important reasons to know the baby's gender ahead of time is so you can actually treat the baby for gender-specific diseases or disorders before it's born so that he or she will have a lower chance of contracting that disease after he or she has been born. All this good news does bring a little bad news, though. The problem now is nowhere in America can you actually get this test at the moment. However, this is not to say that it isn't coming to the States. In fact, it might start being administered early next year. But until then, if you're pregnant, what advice can I give you? Hold it in?
No subject.
Okay, let's switch over to some astronomy. Some new studies have come in from NASA, and it turns out aliens do exist. No, we have no idea about that yet. But we have discovered what seem to be cold stars. They are specifically brown dwarfs, which are stars that do not have enough energy in their cores to fuse hydrogen atoms. This means that they emit light at much longer wavelengths, meaning it's no longer visible, but rather infrared radiation. You know the Predator's view in the Predator movies? Where all you could see was like green, red, and blue and stuff like that? He was looking at infrared radiation, but you actually cannot see it. We just have instruments that can read the infrared radiation, transfer it into the visual spectrum, so then we can see it. Anyway, we've known about brown dwarfs for a long time now, but a newly discovered one in particular has been recorded at a chilly 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And yes, it's a star. Let's relate that to our sun. Our sun is around the steamy range of 9 million degrees Fahrenheit. However, this little brown dwarf, called the oh-so-clever name WISE 1828 plus 2650, is cool enough that you could actually stand on it if it was solid. They should name it Boreas, after the Roman god of the cold winds. But even though it's only 80 degrees, I think it would feel a bit hotter than 80 degrees if you were actually there, simply because what you're standing on is what's giving off the heat, and it's not coming from above like on Earth. So there would be absolutely no such thing as shade, because the thing you're standing on is literally emanating heat. The problem with trying to stand on it, though, is that it's similar to a gas planet, like Jupiter. Seeing that, well, it's a star. It's probably just totally made of hydrogen gas. Therefore, you'd be standing on a big ball of gas, which when you think about it, just doesn't work. Therefore, if you're thinking of being the first person to ever stand on a star, you're on your own.
No subject.
So let's continue with the astronomy trend. After repeated looks at what's known as the dark side of the moon, a new theory has been thought up about the origins of why our moon is what it is today. This theory is that Earth originally had 2 moons, one a bit smaller than the other, and we now have only one because they catastrophically smashed into each other. Before I explain the specifics, here's a little backstory. The moon you can see in the sky, yes, that moon, is actually always the same side of the moon. From Earth, you can never see the other side. Therefore, this back side of the moon has come to be known as the dark side of the moon.
Come to the dark side.
We have cookies.
But we have really bad resolution in the dark. Look at that, that's horrible. But we call it this simply because we can't see it, even though it has its own days and nights, just like the side we can see. We first saw the other side in 1959 when Soviet Russia sent up a spacecraft that got some photos of it. But the thing is, even though it's no different with respect to days and nights, the terrain is completely different. The side we can see is mostly relatively flat, with large plains of hardened volcanic rock, while the other side is very mountainous and jagged. Computer simulations of where this difference may come from essentially show one moon pancaking itself onto the other. But where did the other moon come from? Well, probably the same place we thought our current moon came from, namely a collision of Earth with another planet about the size of Mars, that resulted in a whole bunch of rubble that eventually packed together into one moon. Now we think that collision may have made two moons for Earth, the smaller of which being about a third of our current moon's diameter, and about 4% of the mass. The two spun around Earth until they eventually collided, and this collision may have pushed up molten rock from the center of the bigger one onto the side of the moon we can see now, explaining the vast flat areas of hardened volcanic rock. All this being said, this is not the only theory that has come up since 1959 as to how the back of the moon is so different from the front, but it's still a pretty interesting one, and I think worth mentioning and thinking about. Also, one of those other theories is that the Transformers landed on it, and they did all those other things in that movie that I haven't seen yet.
News subject.
Okay, last story, and this one's a weird one. The results of a new study have proven that watching Spongebob makes you stupid. Finally! Okay, well maybe they didn't say it in that manner. They found that watching something like Spongebob decreased the ability of kindergartners to concentrate. The study took 3 groups of 4-year-olds and had one do some coloring. One watched a slow-paced PBS program called Kailo, or Kailo? I don't know how you pronounce that. It's spelled Caillou. I've never heard of the show, but then again, I haven't watched PBS in a very long time. I mean, back in my day, I was watching Zaboomafoo. Ah, that was such a good show. I still remember the theme song. But I'm not going to sing it because it'll make me look like an idiot, and then I'll get it stuck in your head. Anyway, the third group got to watch Spongebob. Sponge Pants Square Bob, he's a friendly little guy. Ah, stealing jokes from Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series. That's below me. No, it's not. But check out the Abridged series. It's really funny. Link in the drop-down bar below. And I keep getting sidetracked. See, even thinking about SpongeBob makes me get distracted. But this SpongeBob study had results that showed a level of concentration after coloring and watching the slow-paced show were a lot higher than those who watched SpongeBob. So in essence, it's not the act of watching TV that rots your brain, it's what you watch. And in case you want to test this with your own kid, one of the main concentration tests that they used was called a marshmallow test. In this test, the researchers left a kid in a room with 10 marshmallows in front of them. If the kid rang a bell that called the researcher back, they could have 2 of the marshmallows. And if they could wait until the researcher came back, they could have all 10. Now that's just mean! Taunting kindergartners with marshmallows. Sheesh. But I guess it works in the sense that it tests the child's patience, which I believe is directly related to concentration. Yes, all in the name of science, eh? But from tests like this, they were able to see who could actually be patient enough to wait for something they wanted. Now keep in mind, this is only one study of one set of children, meaning there is room for a lot of error. So don't take this to be an instant proof that SpongeBob equals the devil for your kid. However, the researchers that performed this study do suggest you don't allow your kids to watch something fast-paced like SpongeBob immediately before doing their kindergarten assessments. Now I just have to ask the question, what is a kindergarten assessment? It's been so long since I've been in kindergarten that I have no idea what it's supposed to mean. The level of work that I'm doing these days compared to then, it's almost like then it wasn't work. Speaking of assessments, I still have enough calculus to do. And then there's the editing of this video, and then the posting, and then all that other fun stuff that takes forever. So I'm gonna go do that. If you want to read a little further into any of the stories that I talked about today, the links to all of them are in the drop-down bar below, including a bonus story about snow leopards in Afghanistan. Remember, click the like button if you liked the show, and click the subscribe button if you'd like to see more. Ciao!